Trump says H1-B visas are needed because of the lack of U.S. talent. I was told America's Got Talent, but I guess that's not the case. President Donald Trump ignited a wave of MAGA criticism in defending the use of the H-1B visa program, telling an interviewer in the United States, by the way, I disagree with him, but the clip's hilarious, telling an interviewer the United States needs to bring in talent and pushing back on the idea that the country already has enough talented workers. Fox News host Laura Ingraham questioned Trump on H-1B visas this week, saying they hurt wages for American workers. I agree, but you do also have to bring in talent, Trump said. When Ingram countered that we have plenty of talent, Trump responded, no, you don't. That's brutal. But then he followed up and he said, you don't have certain talents. So I think this is Trump being blunt. But, ultimately, I don't think that was a great thing for him to say.
He's like, look, we're gonna make America great again, but we're just gonna have to start elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally the worst thing he could have said.
Well, let me play this clip of him real quick.
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In
Operation
Georgia,
Paperclip.
Yeah, I say we brought in Nazi scientists
because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. Making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
All right, so there's a couple issues here. Firstly, the way the H-1B issue is always framed is that we just don't have the proper talent in the United States, and American workers aren't competent enough to fulfill certain duties and fill certain positions. Here's the problem with that. You could potentially make the argument that when you are dealing with once-in-a-generation brilliance, which, yes, certain very exclusive high-level jobs do require, that maybe in some circumstances you might have to start hunting in other countries because the United States just doesn't have anyone who fits the requirements of this very important position. There's a conversation there. That is not how H-1B visas are used the vast majority of the time. You look at these H-1B listings, and they've got people driving trucks on H-1Bs who don't even speak English, and they're like running their bot farm and cooking at the same time as they're behind the wheel, like running over families in their minivans. The whole argument is ridiculous. We can't allow them to frame it this way. It is obvious that the purpose of H-1B visas is a handout to companies that make billions of dollars annually off of high-skilled workers but don't want to pay them high-skilled wages.
Yeah, he's a CEO at heart. Like he really is. And we kind of get into this a lot of times. You think about it, it's like what's going on in Hollywood right now, not to derail, but people are losing their jobs because AI is streamlining the creative process for a lot of them there. And I don't expect a CEO to look at the creatives and value them the ways perhaps a manager would, or somebody who worked in the creative fields before them. The guy who went to business school isn't going to see them with the same value. And Trump at his heart is a businessman, and he's not going to look at the American jobs as the value that he claims to, because this clearly proves that that's not true.
So first of all, H-1B there's actually a separate category of visa for exceptional talents called the O1 visa.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not what H-1B is. The second problem that I have with this is all summer we were inundated with case after case of H-1B violations getting exposed. To be able to qualify for an H-1B, you cannot have an American qualified candidate apply for the job. we're finding out that they've been listing these H1B positions in the back of newspapers that no one reads to technically legally qualify for having advertised the job and then just shipping it out to an H1B. The problem that I have with this as well is that we have public universities around the country that are hiring H1Bs by the tens of thousands. These are state universities that are required, they're set up to educate the people of that state in a, fiscally make it like a cheap university for the residents of that state. And what are they doing? They're going out and hiring H1Bs. With state government, taxpayer dollars. I mean, it's an absolutely insane problem all the way around. But, quite frankly, I think there's a lot of confusion going on.
H1B universities are hiring foreign workers to work as staff and administrators. Is that where they're coming in?
Teachers, staff, administrators, yes. So in fiscal year 2025, 17,000 H1 this year, 17,000 H1B visas were granted for universities around the country.
Man, it's an interesting combo because if they're not exceptional talent, but they're better than average, and
they're not.
The teachers, like a foreign teacher, they're getting like a Chinese teacher to come in and teach mathematics at some private public
over the
schools.
Summer when President Trump, he came out with this announcement with Lutnick that they were going to be placing a $100,000 price tag associated to H-1Bs. There's an article in Houston Chronicle talking about hundreds of Houston teachers are going to be not able to qualify anymore because they have K through 12 teachers in Texas on H-1Bs. We can't even hire teachers.
They need to end the H-1B visa program entirely. I don't see the point. Like for H-1Bs, if you want to talk about the old ones, that's a totally different topic. But this has been my position for a long time, and the H-1B visa program entirely. Well, we don't need to keep importing people. We need to focus on the Americans that are here, the people that are here. Right. We need to encourage them to have children. We need to have policies that encourage people to have families and encourage people to stay together when they get married. That should be a focus by the government.
Yeah, my problem with the H-1B program, and if you asked me 4 years ago, I would not have told you this, but this year I've been absolutely black-pilled on the program, understanding. So you can go through the list of jobs that people have for the H-1B. I mentioned the universities, state governments around the country are hiring H-1Bs. What we are seeing as well, you can go through the list of, applicants in your area. You'll see 7-Eleven managers. We don't have people who can manage 7-Eleven. And at the same time, what we're seeing as well, in addition to the fraud I mentioned earlier, what we're seeing is, we're seeing college graduates, American students graduating universities with technical STEM degrees, unable to get jobs.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very serious problem because we will never be able to solve the problem of Americans not being, quote unquote, talented enough to fill these roles. We'll never be able to solve that problem if we're just giving those jobs away because people will stop pursuing those degrees and we're essentially going to import an upper class. Now, another huge part of this is you mentioned that there were a lot of companies that were putting ads for jobs in the backs of obscure papers and magazines that no one was reading. And I remember reading about this, and I can't remember the name of it. Someone either made an app or a website that was exposing this. Do you remember the name of that?
I forget it. I'll have to look it up. But there's an X account where they're exposing this, and they've done an amazing job. And the backlash was hilarious because they got angry that Americans were calling and applying for it. So Americans, so you see the job will come up on the X account and you'd just go apply. The second you apply, that job can no longer be filled by an H-1B person.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That's
just the act of applying caused them to no longer be able to fill that position with H-1B because of the regulations.
You had to call in. The thing is, if you really wanted to get seen for an interview, you needed to call in and talk with an accent. Yes, I went to the software job. And they bring you in. You're like, hey, guys, how are you? No, I'm the guy who talked to you on the phone.
It's just how I sound on the phone.
Yeah,
cold.
I don't know what you're talking about. I thought
in regards to this interview with Laura Ingraham and Donald Trump, I think that Trump generally is a disagreeable personality type. There's agreeability, on a scale, and he's just made a living being disagreeable. If you come at him, especially emotionally charged, he'll say, no, you're wrong. No, stop. No. Yes. And then when she said, we have talent here, he's like, no, we don't. He's probably sitting there thinking, oh my God, of course we do and we can. but it's not that. I don't think that he's intending to stunt the growth of the talent of the American people, or he's not saying that it just because he hasn't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
The problem is to his base right now, it feels like he's chosen the donor class over actual American citizens.
I think he needs a longer platform to talk about this because that was a 1 minute, high-powered, emotional charge that he barely got any coherent message out. Talking about, like, why? What's so important about the H1Bs? I really want to hear him go on that.
He needs to let Stephen Miller write the press relief and then sign it Donald Trump is what he needs to do. That's what he should do. He should say, Stephen, what am I going to say to the American people about this topic? And then Stephen's going to tell him, and then he should do exactly what Stephen says.
Then he and Stephen could do a conference where they sit together and talk about it. If Miller's the guy that has the info, and
Miller's the guy that he has the best idea the best ideas, in my opinion, when it comes to immigration and stuff like that.
Is he
which is basically no immigration.
Is he not pro H1B? Is Miller not pro H1B?
I know that he's not pro-immigration. I don't know his specific take on H1Bs because there's not just H1B. It's like there's all kinds of subcategories as well. So I don't know. He would know the specifics obviously better than I would. But I know that he's very pro-American worker and he's very anti-immigrant.
The other flip side, I'm trying to steel man Trump's perspective, is that if you bring in like a Chinese teacher to a college and they're a really good teacher, but they're not like exceptional 01, then they can teach the kids and make the American students better than if we didn't have a great teacher.
We shouldn't take any Chinese at all.
Or than India, whatever country, foreign country, you know?
Well, okay, fair enough. But at least because we've talked, like there's talk about Trump was mentioning taking 600,000 Chinese students. Every single Chinese person that comes to the United States is a possible spy, is a likely spy, because if a Chinese student comes here, the Chinese government will then apply pressure to that student's family and say, you need to do this for us. You need to do that for us. So every single Chinese student, every single Chinese person that comes here is a liability. There should be zero Chinese students let into the United States.
Liability doesn't mean you have to get rid of the thing. If some things can have liabilities that are they're still worth having.
It depends on the liability, though. If it's you're dealing with a foreign spy who try to sell your country,
and you look at the industries that China has their students focus on, right? And you look at the way that China produces, or the way that China treats intellectual property and stuff like that. They just steal everything.
Yeah, they don't really
steal
value
everything.
From what I've been told.
So there is no benefit to having Chinese people come to the United States, help develop things in the United States, and then send it back to China.
It's a different conversation than H1Bs because we're talking about students. My experience with Chinese students. I was just at Rice at the nanotechnology lab. There's Chinese students developing material science like
that's called Rice.
New batteries.
And it's going back to China.
No, they're starting corporations in the United States and made CEOs of these corporations to hire American workers.
Maybe they're doing that, but the information is still going back to China.
But it's also going to the United States. If they go to China, it's just going to go to China.
But that's why we don't bring them in.
And they're using our resources to develop it.
I mean, they're not like pro. A lot of these people are not like pro-communist dictatorships. Like they're not.
But Ian, the point isn't whether or not they're pro. The point is they have family in China, and China will put their family in a hole. They'll put them in jail and say they get out when you start doing what we say. Like China has like there are actual like police departments in America that police the Chinese population in the United States. The FBI has actually found them and broken up some of them. But the point is, China, if you're a Chinese student, if you're a Chinese person from China, you have family in China, they're going to use you against whatever your host country is. And the United States has a responsibility to prevent that.
Does it also say something about what Trump thinks about the American people's station in life? Because I did a video this week about Trump, the Trump administration, like Customs and Border Protection, were like using shots of the Batman advertising deportations and stuff like that. So is the idea supposed to be that we free up lower wage jobs by deporting illegal immigrants? Americans can have those jobs, but anything higher than that, no, we're going to import H1B visas. So there's no upward mobility. You can get those jobs because we're going to deport illegal aliens, fine. But you're not going to have any upward mobility because we legally bring in people, which will benefit the corporations because they can give them those jobs at a lower cost.
Exactly. Well, and also it's just disheartening and confusing that Trump has gone back and forth on this so much. We were all white pilling because he said, oh, actually, we're going to make them pay $100,000 for each H1B. And then some were saying it was going to be annually reoccurring. Which, if you really need to import this talent from other places in the world and you're not just doing it because you want to cut down wages, then surely you should be willing to pay a premium for that. This is somebody who's the top 1% of the top 1% talent-wise. Oh, but as it turns out, they're not willing to do that because we all know that that's not what they're looking for. So I'm curious, why do you guys think Trump keeps going back and forth on this? Is it just a question of him being caught between trying to please his base and trying to please some of the business people around him, or what? His advisors? Is he getting bad information and input from the people who surround him?
I think he at first was idealistic and like, we're just going to go with what feels right. And now he's being utilitarian and realizing I don't want to gut, 6% of our economy by stripping out the H1Bs.
I saw a tweet with somebody saying that Charlie Kirk was somebody who would have been able to tell him that ideas like this are bad and that your base isn't going to support it. And without Charlie there to kind of give him that information, that his administration is suffering right now.
Yeah, and one of the good things about Donald Trump is very pragmatic. Like, if there is a policy that he presents and it gets a lot of pushback, he will change. He's not
always chimp.
What was that?
I said always chimp.
Always
exactly.
chimp.
That's why we freak out. That's why we do
Donald
it.
Trump will respond. And that is something that, honestly, in my opinion, is good. So, like, if
I think that Trump has been on the road for the last 6 weeks in foreign countries. I think he's been hearing from a lot of CEOs. I think he's back. I think we need to tell him what the American people think very clearly on this.
Totally agreed. And one thing we got to remember about Trump, we admire him because he realizes you can just do things. We get upset with him because he also realizes you can just say things. And Trump will just say things sometimes, and we got to call him out and say, not what we voted for, not what we're looking for. Not what we're interested in.
He's not an ideologue. He doesn't have some kind of he doesn't have an ideological plan for what's going on. He wants to do things that are going to make him look good, and the things that will make him look good as a president is having a successful country.
Well, yeah, and I'll say this. If there's any shot of Donald Trump ever hearing this, or anyone hearing this who's near him or who speaks to him, the people who are telling you that we need more H1Bs, the people who are telling you we need more IVF, the people who are telling you that we need more immigrants, the people who are telling you to abandon your base, just remember this. Your base loves you even when they're disappointed in you and unhappy about these things. These people telling you to do this stuff, they hate you even when you do what they want. Yep. You can't go along with them. You got to give the voters what they voted for.
I don't think that American equals better. That's not the way it works.
But that's not the argument.
America with foreign workers.
It's no. It's not a question of does American equal better, like is in our Americans intrinsically more valuable as human beings. It's who are you rooting for? Are you rooting for the people who elected you and the people you were elected to govern, or are you rooting for foreigners?
Well, if I could get you a tutor, and it was the best tutor was like an Indian guy, why wouldn't I get you the Indian guy? And we have a legal precedent for it.
If you could give me the best well, this is an argument for meritocracy, but the reality is it's just not the case that you're automatically going to find a better person who's not American to do the job.
Not automatic.
When we found the last 6 months, the amount of H1B fraud is showing that the companies that are using this program are cheating the system that was set up to allow for H1Bs to fill jobs that there were not Americans to do. The fact that they have to cheat shows that there are Americans to do it. So to be quite frank, I think that is an argument for, if you want to change, the immigration system and set up, there's a lot of other immigration programs other than H1B, but quite frankly, like the fact that they're cheating on this is showing, Palmer Luckey talked about the amount of fraud that he's seen in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley on this. The fact that they're cheating on it shows that it is not as being presented.
And one thing we have to keep in mind about H1Bs, the H1B visa is tied to a job. So if a person gets brought in on an H1B visa, the employer has a lot of power over the person. So if you're on an H1B visa and you're like, and your boss comes and says, we need you to work this weekend, you're not going to say no. You say, okay. And that even if you're on salary, right, you're going to do what they say, because if your boss gets bummed out with you, he's going to be like, all right, well, you're fired.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to go back to wherever you're from.
Unless you're an intrinsic part of the company.
Pardon me?
Unless you're an intrinsic part of the company, like a
But
software developer.
again, no, hold on a second. Again, you're talking about H1Bs as if they're O1s.
No, software developers, for instance.
H1B
You can't just fire your developers.
Oh, yeah, you can.
I mean,
yes,
good luck if you want to take 6 months off if you can afford it.
You can and replace them with someone else if they're not skilled.
It's not that easy, though. Have you run a software company? That's
not a software company, but I've run companies, and yes, you
man.
You absolutely can. If you're a big company,
I ran a software company, brother.
Ian, even still,
not that easy.
Ian, the point is, it's the leverage, it's the threat. You're going to have this person that's like, oh man, if I don't do what he says, I could lose my job, and if I lose my job, I'll get sent home. It's more than just losing the job to the person that you're talking about. You're talking about they're losing their income and being sent out of the U.S. And so it doesn't matter if they actually do get fired and if they have to replace them. The point is he has far more leverage than a boss does over an employee that's already an American citizen, and that leverage is what will make the person say, "Well, I got to do what they say, even whether they want to or not."
It's the same leverage they're talking about when they were talking about illegal aliens getting deported, because they work for these companies under the table and they have no rights because they don't have the same protections that you or I do. It's just another layer of giving the companies power over their employees.
I think you're making a good point, Phil, that it does kind of put the worker at a disadvantage even more so. And you're also making an extremely good point, Noah, that it's being defrauded. The system's being defrauded. That's like what?
Yeah.
I'm not just saying just shut it down, but what?
I am.
Yeah. My problem with my problem with the immigration, and like the reason that I side with, frankly, the American people who keep, every time they have an opportunity, they vote for the guy who wants to restrict immigration. And I don't think that it's the American people are xenophobic. I don't think it's that the American people have a problem with immigrants. I think it's the fact that they've been lied to by every person on the immigration debate for the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. They keep getting promised, okay, we'll do this amnesty and then we'll build the wall. We will do, we'll do amnesty first and then we'll do border security second. And they have been lied to over and over and over again. And I think the dishonesty has led to what we have now, which is like, hey guys, like, come on, like finally, like we've got to stop. And it's because of the dishonesty. And so like, cause the American people are like God-loving, amazing people. And the fact that like what we're going through right now is a result of blatant dishonesty through the entire system, and I think that's what the people want fixed more than anything else. Not just dishonesty, but they've actually been made to be seen as bad people if they don't agree with it. That's the worst part. Not only have they been lied to for the last 40 years, now the argument has gotten so bad that if you believe in borders at all, you're a bad person.
A racist.
100%.
A racist.
100%. Mm-hmm. That's the argument the left has done, consistently. Every policy.
And Republicans before Trump.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, but that's because the Republicans are afraid of they don't want to step out of line because the Democrats are going to call them racist. The fact that the American people cannot engage in argument because the Democrats are just going to say, well, you're a bad person, this is a moral argument, etc. That's a terrible thing for the country, because then you can't actually get people that will debate ideas. It's all about just ad hominem attacks. You don't like this policy, you want to kill children. You don't like this policy, it's because you're a racist. You don't like this policy, it's because you're an Islamophobe. You don't like this policy, it's because of, it's always these attacks against these ad hominem attacks, as opposed to saying, well, what are the actual arguments here? Nobody steelmans anyone's arguments when it comes to policy making, and that is bad for America.
I think Trump went in America first, the second term particularly, and the first term, but then he's more liberal economic order first. Like he's really trying to preserve Israel, our hegemony over the Suez, that whole Middle East thing. Not that he wants war, but that he's more global mind right now. And this H1-B thing has been used for 40 years for the world to disrupt and destroy liberalism in the United States. It sounds like they've really corrupted this, and they want to use people's compassion to be like, you can't just get rid of visas. That would destroy our heritage, what we've built our ethos upon. But he's more like, bro, we're a world government. Like this is a world, the economics is everywhere. You can't just like borders. Yeah, you can set up machine gun nests, but like you can't, it's like you can call them on the phone you can video chat, you can video conference. That's what it seems like, is that he's more globally mindseted right now.
Do you think, all right, here's a question. Do you think when some of these things come out, it's because Trump is trying to pick his battles, and he doesn't think he's going to be able to achieve something or wants to focus on something else, but he needs to brand everything as a victory. So he just says, I wanted this the whole time.
I mean, that speaks to his ego, if that's true.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious. I'm spitballing here. I'm just musing, as they say.
He does like saying that he does like promoting himself as not making mistakes and getting it right. Like the COVID stuff, he did a lot of that with COVID, the way that was handled. I mean, they printed $7 trillion. Maybe it wasn't his administration, but the stuff he had set up and kind of green lighted, and he but I don't know. To answer your question, I can't really think for him.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.